Jenna's got a second season of her show Indefensible. It's a true crime show, but not one that you would necessarily expect. One that actually goes a little bit deeper and isn't hung up on all the salacious details. And I want to ask Jenna specifically why, but let's just play a little clip from specifically about criminalizing pregnant people. Hey, new moms. Not that is
like,
that is
do that?
Not the clip. Oh no. Okay, let's play this clip and you can explain it to me later.
We need to be doing more to address the conditions that are triggering violence. Mm-hmm. So we have data that says that economics motivate violence. And when you alleviate people's economic stress, they are less likely to be violent.
Here's $50. Don't beat your wife today.
Not exactly. I would say, here's a living wage. Let's see if that alleviates some of the stress on your family.
Give a man a fish. Maybe he'll still beat the shit out of his wife. Teach a man to fish. Maybe a wave could come by. Maybe he falls off the boat, drowns. Wife and kids are safe.
I am in no way advocating for killing people who abuse their partners.
He fell.
Indefensible, Thursday.
Okay.
All right. So the show, I was given an opportunity to make a true crime show. I wanted to make something a little different than a true crime show because I'm kind of burnt out by true crime. I feel like it's a little problematic and exploitative and everybody's doing it. So our show uses true crime kind of as like a Trojan horse to bring in true crime watchers. And then we make the show more about the systemic issues that enabled the injustice. For that particular episode, it was a very, very challenging episode because it's about criminalized survivors, meaning somebody who kills someone as a form of self-defense, but in court, it's not thought of as self-defense. Oftentimes it's a victim of ongoing domestic violence.
Right.
And oftentimes it's women who do get harsher sentences. Typically the data is murky, but like if a guy kills a woman and their domestic partners, like, you know, he'll oftentimes kill her by strangling her, where if a woman kills a man, because she's just not as strong, it'll be premeditated. She might use a weapon, and those things make your sentence longer when you're convicted. So this episode was about this topic that's really hard to talk about because when someone kills someone, are they also a victim? And I think, you know, we're getting a better understanding of battered women syndrome and domestic violence, and men are victims of domestic violence as well. But it's very murky because at the end of the day, it's like just between two people and you weren't there and you have no idea what happens until somebody ends up dead and there's a trial to convict them. So right. This is Lee Goodmark, who I'm talking to, and she is a lawyer who works specifically with criminalized survivors. And we were talking about, like, you know, if the system doesn't see these people as victims, how do you help people who are in these types of situations before they end up on trial for murder? And she was talking about domestic violence and her ideas, like, you know, there are studies that show, and there's validity to this, that, you know, increasing the minimum wage, giving people economic and like just giving people universal basic income or helping them economically actually decreases domestic violence. Right. That's only part of the story though. And I'm not a statistician. I'm just like a kind of like slightly a comedian, but debatable if you watch me on people's podcasts that are on YouTube. You know, as she was telling me this, which was valid, I'm like, that's not, Trump fucking choked Melania in the elevator, or did he? Like a lot of people, Cora Lewandowski punched some woman, like a lot of, I mean, the list goes on.
Rich people get away with domestic violence all the time.
Yeah, and so it's not all economic. So that was just my light way of being like, I kind of am agreeing with you, but I'm kind of trolling you because that's not the whole story.
Totally, and it's a slippery.
What that clip was.
Thank you for explaining it, and because it's a slippery slope to be like, you know, well, yeah, if we like once we get a universal basic income, and it's like, okay, slow down.
It's also an elitist argument to be like, economics is why people beat the shit out of their wives.
Right. It's a really weirdly like patronizing fucking attitude to be like, well, it's only the poor people who hit their wives, and as you just pointed out, that is not true.
That said, if studies show that like giving people like better paying jobs and decreasing the economic burden on their families does decrease violence, like I'm all for that too. You know what I mean? It's not, you want to make sure that it's.
Well, I think what you do with this show is also like go deeper than the salaciousness of like missing white girl syndrome, right? And the idea of, and the sort of what people love about true crime, which I don't understand at all. I don't watch true crime. I don't listen to any true crime podcasts. I don't get the fascination with murder, either doing it or hearing about it. But for sure, like your show is like, oh no, there's a reason, because there's like another layer. And what that layer is often just talking about femicide in a way that this country does not talk about femicide. And I'm reminded of two things that just happened recently. In your stand-up special, which everyone should watch on Peacock, you talk about Gabby Petito, who, if you guys remember, that young woman who was killed by her boyfriend. They were like doing the van life thing, and a police officer stopped her and got a bunch of an interview with her on his body cam. That police officer actually turned out to himself be a domestic abuser.
I'm shocked.
Shocking. No, but there's that. And then just to this week, a cop, I believe from Virginia, catfished a minor and then arrived at her house, killed her grandparents and her mom, burnt the house down, and then tried to make away with her, like steal away with her. And then he got caught by the cops and other cops. Not his homies, I guess. But like, and then was killed. I think she's okay, but oh my God, the police are also perpetrating this. And I think a lot of true crime, I mean, I don't know, but it definitely feels like it generally sets up police as like the good guys, right?
Like the propaganda. But to your point about my joke,
yes,
you were saying that it kind of called it. I had a joke about it, and then
you did.
True.
You had a joke about it. You were talking about how police are often the, I mean,
How do you train law enforcement to recognize signs of domestic violence? Do you say, hey, officer, if you see a woman who looks at you the way your wife does, arrest that man? It was a joke, but
it's a joke, but
it's true.
And you even mentioned Gabby Petito before this news came out. But like, so what stories are you looking for? Like, what do you want to, how do you like kind of like lure people in and then flip the script on them?
So, I mean, it'll be interesting if we do the show again. We had it's technically one season 1A and season 1B. I can't comment on that. But the stories that I cared about were stories like certain defenses, like episode 2 of the series is on the consent defense, which is also called the rough sex defense. And they're defenses that are not that common, but that are used when like, a typical example is like a guy kills a woman and his defense attorney says, we were having sex and it got rough and I accidentally strangled her. Our story was about that. And those defenses are like outlawed, I think, in England, Ireland. I don't know about Scotland, but they're outlawed in most of the UK and they still exist in the US. And they're bogus. I mean, people don't consent to die during sex. It's not a thing that happens. And so I wanted to cover that issue because, you know, if we care about this stuff, we can actually, I can't
believe that's
put pressure on our lawmakers to make sure that things like the consent defense don't happen in courtrooms in America. There's also the gay panic defense, which is a very controversial defense that has been outlawed in like 13 states. But that defense is a defense attorney will say, oh, my client freaked out because this person was gay and killed them. And oftentimes those defenses will result in a reduced sentence for the defendant. So it's looking at things within the criminal legal system. Junk science was one that we did in this batch of episodes. We have these ideas from shows like Law and Order of like certain things like, blood spatter or lie detector tests or bite mark analysis. We watch these shows and we think these things actually are real when in reality they're not. And the I guess, barrier of entry for certain sciences to be passed up as forensic sciences in courtrooms is really low. And they don't have to be like DNA is really the only type of evidence in that regard that is like pretty accurate. A lot of the other stuff isn't. And yet defense attorneys or prosecutors will use that evidence, and it will sway juries and lead to miscarriages of justice. So the show's looking at different ways our criminal legal system doesn't work. And we kind of, each episode is like one case that touches on like a larger theme. And the whole goal is for all of you who would ever be on a jury to understand just kind of how things work and how they don't work. And that somebody who might be an expert witness might actually be full of shit.
Yeah.
Who's just like an expert witness for hire.
Yeah, I mean, it's fitting that Olayemi is going to be my next guest because she's got a lot of experience with this as a public defender and all these BS excuses.
And it's on both sides.
What are real and what are real and what aren't real, right?
Yeah.
And what she's seen and what she hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And like prosecutors do shady shit all the time. Defense attorneys do shady shit all the time. The one thing that I've learned, because I really didn't think about, you don't really think about the criminal legal system until you're in it, unless you're a prosecutor, a defense attorney, or a judge. But the one thing that I really have learned is like the theatricality of the criminal legal system, just the bells and whistles that both sides will pull out to make their case. And I just didn't realize like how it really is like theater for the jury.
Like how many prop comics there are.
For real. We've done a couple cases in Florida, and one defense attorney was talking about using like VR, giving like the jury VR headsets to try to make his case. I mean, it's really crazy. Yeah.
Well, you did VR in your other show, Soft Focus.
I did do VR in Soft Focus.
It was a VR experience of being sexually assaulted, and you used a hot dog and put it on a man's arm while he had a VR headset. And I think that's the best moment of television maybe ever.
Thank you. We had vegetarian hot dogs for the vegetarians too. Oh, you should put
Still
the link
supposed to be a dick, y'all. We will.
That was one of my favorite segments I've ever done. That show was way more playful because we weren't talking to victims' families.
No, but this, I think you ride a great line in this, and everyone go to Jena's Instagram to check out the clips if you need any excuse to then just bite the bullet and get AMC Plus, or just watch it on AMC Plus, y'all. You can also on YouTube, all the episodes are there and you can watch them, but you gotta get AMC Plus. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do it.